Hi folks, graphing the monopolistically competitive firm. We are going to do a quick video about how to analyze and appropriately graph these monopolistically competitive firms, which is a type of competitive structure a little unlike perfect competition, monopoly, and oligopoly, but within that sort of same realm of study in economics that we call theory of the firm. In monopolistic competition, there are many different firms selling more or less the same type of product, but each individual firm making tiny alterations to the goods and services that they offer. There's a lot of competition, there's a lot of substitutes, typically low barriers to entry, not a lot of training required in order to open up one of these types of firms. Competition, unlike oligopoly, tends to not to be rivalrous, so these firms don't necessarily see local nearby firms as being rivals simply because there are too many of them. Now, because of all of these considerations, the analysis of monopolistically competitive firms looks similar to perfect competition, which I've analyzed in other videos, but with one similarity with respect to monopolies. And so let's go ahead and get started. One quick thing before I get going is, in this analysis, I am assuming that this particular firm that we're about to analyze is earning an economic profit to start off with. Now, that's not always the case on your AP, IB, or college level examinations. Test questions that you may get could and probably will make a different set of assumptions here, so you have to be a little bit careful. Not all analyses of monopolistic competition is going to look exactly like this just because of the initial assumption that I've made here. But in this case, just because this assumption allows us to show a lot of different characteristics of this type of firm, I've started with it. But just be careful when you read your questions, because not all the time will we be starting off with this type of assumption. So here we go. Okay, so we're going to start here with a graph of the firm itself. And so on our vertical axis we have price and cost, and on our horizontal axis we have quantity and output. We're going to draw a downward sloping demand curve, and that's the similarity that this firm has in comparison to monopolies, that both of these types of firms face a downward sloping demand curve. Now, what I want you to notice about this particular demand curve is that its relative shallow slope, and we do that in monopoly or monopolistic competition. We graph it that way to indicate to our examiners or to our professor that we know that there's a lot of competition here and that our customers are pretty sensitive to changes in price, and we get that type of sensitivity and that type of elasticity with a shallow sloping demand curve. We're going to make our marginal revenue curve touch our demand curve only at one point where they meet the vertical price axes, and then downward slope twice as quickly as the demand curve does. So in that respect, it's similar to a monopoly as well. Now we're going to throw in our upwardly sloping or Nike swoop shape marginal cost curve, and we're going to put in our average total cost curve. And again, notice the location of the average total cost curve. I've put the point of productive efficiency here where the marginal cost curve intersects with the average total cost curve lower than the demand, and that's going to show me this initial economic profit that the firm is earning in this particular case that I told you about a couple slides ago. So in order to analyze this firm now, we have all the appropriate information in there. We have to find the profit maximizing rate of output, which is here at MC equal MR. We label that as Q1. That's the amount of output that this firm is going to be producing because it's profit maximizing. And then what we have to do is we have to determine the cost that Q1 output is encountering for the firm, and then we also have to figure out what the demand at that output level is. So to find the cost, we just find the intersection of this Q1 output and the cost. There it is. And then we identify that. I'm just going to call that P2. That's how much Q1 is costing me, P2. To find the demand, we have to go all the way up to the demand curve, and again we ascertain that particular point. Note its price, that's how much I'm selling at P, and then this pink lavender shaded area then is our economic profit. So Q1 is costing me P2, but I'm selling at P, and so this rectangular shaped area that I'm identifying with my cursor represents, sorry about that, economic or supernormal profits. So now let's take a look and see how the industry is going to respond to this firm earning an economic profit. So now I'm looking at the industry rather than the firm, and just keep in mind that the nature of these industries, monopolistically competitive industries, is that there are many firms, that there are low barriers to entry, that there's some degree of market knowledge, meaning that one firm will know a little bit about what other firms are doing in terms of output, business, production, and the price that they're offering their customers for their goods and services. And in general, they're selling sort of heterogeneous groups of goods and services, but they're only making minor amounts of differences to the products that they offer, so only minor amounts of product differentiation here. So here we are with our industry now, vertical price axis and horizontal quantity axis, a downward sloping demand curve, and an upward sloping supply curve. I'm going to ascertain the equilibrium here, find then the market price at P initial and the market quantity at Q initial. And then we know that if one firm is earning an economic profit, and if other firms kind of know that, and that there are low barriers to entry and there's a lot of competition, that's going to draw new firms into this industry, which is going to move our supply curve from S to S1. That means then that I'm going to have a new industry price at P1 and a new industry quantity at Q1. So lower prices and greater output. Now, what we have to do next is figure out, given that increased amount of industry output and the decreased price, what kind of impact is this change going to have on our firm? So we're going to go back and we're going to revisit our firm that is earning an economic profit. There we go. The same picture as was in the previous slide. And what ends up happening is, because of the increased amount of competition, some of this firm's customers will go away for either permanent or for a temporary period and try the business, the goods and services that are being offered by the increased number of firms that have been drawn into this industry. What that means for this firm is a decrease or a left shift in demand. So I'm going to move my demand curve to the left, and there's my downward sloping demand curve at D1. I'm going to make some of my earlier information associated with my first demand curve go away so that we simplify this curve. Now, because I've constructed a new demand curve, I also have to construct a new marginal revenue curve, so it too will shift to the left, the same amount that the demand curve shifted to the left. And I'm going to make my original marginal revenue curve go away. Well, what's ended up happening then is a decrease in demand and, of course, a reduction in marginal revenue. And then we've got then a new profit maximizing rate of output at MC equal MR1. And I'm going to establish that now at output level Q2. And if you pause the video now and compare this slide to the previous slides, you'll see that Q2 represents less output for this individual firm as a result of the increased level of competition and increase in the number of firms entering into this industry. So the immediate impact then of an increased level of competition, increased number of firms in the industry, on this particular firm is a decrease in output. What's this costing me? Well, it just so happens that I've drawn my monopolistically competitive firm here in sort of a long-run position, which means that the cost associated with Q2 level of output and the price at which I'm selling is exactly the same or pretty darn close, as I am indicating here with my dot and a price of P3. Now, why is this the case? Or what does it tell us? This tells us that new firms will enter into the industry up until the point that economic profits are eaten away, because this firm is only earning at P3 normal profit because its demand curve is in tangency with its average total cost curve, and that particular point is the rate of profit maximizing output. So this is a great graph of the long-run position of a monopolistically competitive firm earning only normal profits. You could also, I guess, show it earning very slim economic profits, but that's about the best that these firms are going to be able to sustain in the long run. It's likely that other firms will come into the industry and eat away that economic profit until they get down to zero. A couple of other things that I want you to note about this particular firm: that it is not achieving allocative efficiency. That would be at marginal cost, and again, that's the firm supply curve here, equal demand. So this point where my cursor is centering now would be allocative efficiency, and the firm isn't achieving that. It's not going to give us that because we don't have perfect competition. We have a form of imperfect competition here. We have a lot of substitutes here, but not an infinite number of substitutes. And likewise, this firm isn't producing at the rate of productive efficiency. That would be at minimum ATC, which is where my cursor is right now. Again, it's going to be producing outputs less than productive and allocative efficiency. That also means that we're going to have some degree of dead weight loss. And I'm not going to junk up my curve to show you that, but again, it's just identified as this triangular shaped area that's bounded by the intersection between marginal cost and demand, my final price, and then the profit maximizing rate of output. So we do have some level of dead weight loss to society, some loss to consumer surplus, and a loss of producer surplus. So in a way, again, these firms are a little like monopolies, but there's an awful lot of competition involved and a lot of substitutions, and so that makes them like perfect competition as well. I hope that makes the analysis of these monopolistically competitive firms that are so prevalent in our markets today in our society a little bit clearer. I look forward to seeing you soon.